Deep in the forgotten reaches of the Blue Ridge Mountains, a small boy stands before a dilapidated cabin. 11-year-old Ethan Parker's serious eyes, too old for his young face, survey the property that is now officially his. Beside him, Scout, his loyal German shepherd, sniffs cautiously at the overgrown path, ears perked forward in alert curiosity, his black and tan coat gleaming in the late afternoon sun filtering through ancient pines. The cabin before them is a weathered structure of dark timber and crumbling stone, its porch sagging dangerously under the weight of discarded furniture and mysterious mechanical parts that spill outward like the innards of a wounded beast. Using money saved from 2 years of odd jobs after his father's death in Afghanistan, Ethan had made the only bid at the county auction, $57 for this forgotten mountain property and all its worthless contents. His mother, Sarah, stands by their old pickup truck, her face a mixture of concern and reluctant pride as her withdrawn son takes in his first real possession. All around the cabin, junk spills into the yard, rusted appliances, stacks of rotting lumber, broken glass jars, and what appears to be the skeleton of an ancient automobile partially reclaimed by weeds. The locals in town had exchanged uncomfortable glances when Ethan made his purchase, and he still remembers their whispers about Old Man Wilson's place, and warnings that no one should disturb what's up there. But Ethan had ignored them, drawn by something he couldn't explain, a pull toward this mountain and this forgotten place that promised secrets buried beneath decades of accumulated debris. As Scout presses his warm body against Ethan's leg, the boy reaches down to scratch behind his friend's ears, taking comfort in his presence, the only constant in his life since his father never came home. Together, they would unravel whatever secrets this cabin held, no matter what lay beneath the surface of this mountain's memory. Sarah calls from the truck, her voice carrying on the mountain breeze, "Ethan, don't go inside until I've checked it first." But her words barely register as he stares at his purchase. The key feels warm now, almost alive in his palm, as if responding to proximity to its lock. Scout suddenly lifts his head, ears twitching toward the forest behind the cabin. A branch snaps somewhere in the distance, and the dog gives a single, soft woof. Ethan turns to look, but sees only the endless green of pine and oak, shadows deepening as the sun begins its descent behind the ridge. For just a moment, he thinks he catches movement between the trees, a flash of something pale that vanishes as quickly as it appeared. "Did you see that, Scout?" he whispers. But the German shepherd has already returned his attention to the cabin, his posture alert but not alarmed. Ethan shakes his head, dismissing it as a deer or his overactive imagination. "Come on," he says to Scout. "Let's see what $57 really bought us." As Sarah begins unloading their essential supplies from the truck, Ethan takes his first tentative steps onto his property, Scout padding cautiously at his side, their shadows stretching long across the debris-strewn yard. The cabin's door hangs crookedly on rusted hinges, protesting with a long, mournful creak as Ethan pushes it open to reveal an interior even more cluttered than the yard, decades of dust-coating bizarre collections of junk that loom like slumbering beasts in the dim light. Glass cases filled with preserved specimens cast eerie silhouettes against the walls, while stacks of yellowed newspapers reach precariously toward the ceiling, their headlines from another era declaring forgotten crises and celebrations. Mismatched furniture buried under tops and boxes create a maze through the main room, and strange mechanical devices whose purposes Ethan can't begin to guess sit on tables and shelves, their gears and dials frozen in time. The air inside is stale and thick, carrying an undercurrent of something Ethan can't identify beneath the expected smells of dust and decay, something almost electric that makes the hairs on his arms stand up. Scout's behavior immediately changes upon crossing the threshold, his ears flattening against his head, and a low whine building in his throat as he presses closer to Ethan's leg. The dog's eyes dart around the shadowy interior, tracking something Ethan cannot see, his tail tucked low in a way the boy has never witnessed before. "It's okay, Scout," Ethan whispers, though uncertainty edges his voice as they venture deeper into the cluttered space. Sunlight struggles through dirt-caked windows, creating narrow beams that illuminate swirling dust particles like tiny galaxies in the gloom. In one corner, a collection of antique radios sits in silent rows, their dials and knobs gleaming dully. In another, what appears to be scientific equipment, beakers and tubes and instruments whose functions Ethan can only guess at, are arranged with surprising care. Everything bears the mark of methodical organization gone to ruin through neglect and time. Not the random accumulation of a hoarder, but the careful collection of someone with purpose. When they reach a particular corner where a heavy oak cabinet stands surrounded by mechanical debris, Scout stops abruptly, his paws rooted to the floorboards. His hackles rise visibly, and a deep, rumbling growl emerges from his chest. "What is it, boy?" Ethan asks, trying to see what has alarmed his companion. The oak cabinet is different from the other furniture, its craftsmanship finer, its surface less dusty, as if it had been touched more recently than anything else in the cabin. Scout's growl intensifies as Ethan steps toward it, and when he reaches out to touch the tarnished brass handle, the dog barks sharply, making Ethan jump. "Ethan?" His mother calls from outside, her footsteps approaching the door. "What's that noise? Is everything okay?" After a day of clearing minimal paths through the junk, Sarah creates a habitable corner in what once was the living room. 3 sleeping bags lie spread across the swept wooden floor, their bright, modern nylon, a stark contrast to the faded remnants of another era surrounding them. A battery-powered lantern casts a warm circle of light that barely holds back the pressing darkness of the cabin. Outside, the mountain night has fallen completely, transforming the windows into black mirrors that reflect their small family back at themselves. Scout has refused to eat his dinner, the kibble sitting untouched in his bowl as he maintains his vigil by Ethan's side, occasionally glancing toward the oak cabinet he wouldn't approach earlier. "He'll eat when he's hungry," Sarah says, trying to sound unconcerned, though Ethan notices how she keeps looking toward the door, as if calculating how quickly they could leave if necessary. "This place is something else," she adds, her voice deliberately light. "Old man Wilson must have been quite the collector." Ethan nods, not mentioning how Scout's behavior has set him on edge, how the cabin seems to breathe around them, settling and creaking in ways that feel almost deliberate. As they prepare for bed, Sarah checks the locks twice before climbing into her sleeping bag, her face illuminated by her phone as she sends one last text to her sister back in town. "No signal," she sighs, placing the phone beside her pillow. "We'll have to drive down the mountain if we need anything." Sleep comes surprisingly easily to Ethan, the exhaustion of the day pulling him under despite the unfamiliar surroundings. But sometime in the deepest part of night, he wakes suddenly, his heart pounding without knowing why. The lantern has dimmed to a faint glow, the batteries running low. Beside him, Scout stands rigid, his body trembling slightly, eyes fixed on the darkest corner of the cabin. A low growl rumbles in the German shepherd's chest, so quiet it's almost imperceptible. Through sleep-blurred eyes, Ethan thinks he sees something moving among the piles of junk, not the scurrying of a mouse or raccoon, but a deliberate reorganizing, as though unseen hands are searching for something hidden in the decades of accumulated debris. "Scout," he whispers, his voice barely audible. The dog responds by pressing closer, his warm body a shield between Ethan and whatever lurks in the darkness. For a long moment, they both remain frozen, watching as shadows seem to move against the natural flow of the dying light. Then, as suddenly as it began, the movement stops. Scout's growl fades, though his posture remains alert. Ethan reaches for the lantern, turning it up, and the shadows retreat to their normal places. His mother sleeps on, unaware, her breathing deep and regular. "Did you see that?" Ethan whispers to Scout, who finally lies down, his head resting protectively across the boy's legs. Outside, an owl calls, the sound floating through the night like a question waiting for an answer that never comes. In the harsh morning light, Ethan begins sorting through his purchased belongings while his mother cleans what she can of the kitchen area. The night's strange events feel distant now, easy to dismiss as dreams born from an overactive imagination and the stress of moving into such an unusual new home. Scout seems to have recovered his normal demeanor, though he still avoids the oak cabinet, giving it a wide berth as he follows Ethan through the cluttered rooms. "We should make a pile of things to throw away," Sarah suggests, wrestling with a broom whose bristles have seen better days, and maybe another pile of things that might be worth selling. Ethan nods absently, his attention caught by a stack of equipment near what must have once been a study area. Lifting a tangle of old radio parts, he discovers a leather-bound journal beneath, its cover worn smooth by frequent handling. The pages are filled with meticulous handwriting, line after line of observations and notes in a precise, educated script. The entries begin normally enough, weather reports and notes on local wildlife. But as Ethan flips further into the journal, the tone changes, growing increasingly frantic. The 12th of June, 1963. The disturbances continue. Something is interfering with the equipment. The readings make no sense, unless what I've feared all along is true. And later, August 3, I've seen them again. The watchers in the trees. They appear as children, but move in ways no human child would move. They are studying us as surely as we study them. Interspersed with the text are complex diagrams of the night sky above the mountain, constellations marked and remapped with additional stars that Ethan doesn't recognize from his own limited knowledge of astronomy. Scout follows Ethan closely throughout the day, except when he approaches the oak cabinet. The dog whines softly when Ethan circles back to it, drawn by its obvious importance and the way it stands out from the rest of the haphazard collection. Unlike the other furniture, the cabinet bears no stacks of papers or equipment on top, as if it had been deliberately kept accessible. Running his fingers along the dark wood, Ethan discovers that it is secured with a heavy padlock, unlike any other furniture in the cabin. When he touches the lock, Scout barks sharply, not in warning, but as if trying to communicate something urgent. Crouching down, Ethan examines the base of the cabinet more carefully. Beneath it, just visible in a gap between floorboards, he spots what appears to be a faint, pulsing blue light. "Mom," he calls, excitement overriding caution. "I think there's something under here." But as Sarah approaches, the light abruptly disappears, leaving Ethan questioning whether he saw it at all. Scout whines again, pawing at the floor where the light had been, his dark eyes fixed on Ethan's face with an intelligence that sometimes unsettles even those who love him most. The afternoon brings a break in their work of sorting and cleaning, and Ethan convinces his mother he needs to explore the area around the cabin. "Stay within sight of the house," she warns, handing him a bottle of water and checking that his phone is in his pocket, though they both know it's useless without signal. "And keep Scout with you." As if she needed to add that, the German Shepherd hasn't left Ethan's side all day except to avoid the oak cabinet. The forest around their new home is dense but beautiful, old-growth trees creating a cathedral of dappled light and shadow. The ground is soft with decades of fallen pine needles, muffling their footsteps as they follow what might once have been a path, but has long since grown over. Scout trots ahead, nose to the ground, occasionally lifting his head to test the air, leading them on a winding route that eventually brings them to a small clearing. Here, the trees thin enough to offer a breathtaking view of the valley below, miles of unbroken forest stretching to the distant ridge of mountains that form the horizon. For the first time since arriving, Ethan feels a sense of peace, a rightness in being here despite the cabin's strange atmosphere. He sits on a fallen log, Scout flopping down at his feet, and takes a long drink of water. That's when he sees it, a flash of movement at the edge of the clearing. Looking up, he glimpses what appears to be another boy, approximately his age, watching from between distant trees. The boy is pale, dressed in clothes that seem oddly old-fashioned, and he stands perfectly still, observing Ethan with an unblinking intensity. "Hello?" Ethan calls, his voice sounding thin in the vast quiet of the forest. "Who are you?" At the sound, the figure retreats deeper into the forest, seeming to fade between the trees rather than run in any normal way. Scout barks once, a sharp, alert sound, but doesn't give chase as he normally would when spotting wildlife or strangers. Instead, the German Shepherd stays protectively close to Ethan, his dark eyes tracking the spot where the boy disappeared, body tense but not aggressive. Curious, Ethan approaches the place where the boy had stood, finding nothing but undisturbed forest floor. No footprints, no broken twigs, no sign that anyone had been there at all. Reaching into his pocket, He pulls out the journal he's been carrying since finding it that morning. Flipping through the pages, he finds the passage he half remembered. The Watchers in the trees. They appear as children but move in ways no human child would move. A chill runs down his spine despite the warm afternoon Sunday. Closing the journal, he looks back toward the cabin, just visible through the trees. From this distance, it looks almost quaint, its dilapidated state softened by perspective. The junk in the yard like abstract sculptures catching the golden light. But he can't shake the feeling that he's being watched, not just by the boy who vanished, but by the forest itself, by something ancient and patient that has been waiting a very long time. "Let's go back, Scout," he says quietly, and the dog falls into step beside him, glancing back only once at the empty space between the trees. That night, Ethan mentions the boy to his mother as they eat a simple dinner of sandwiches and chips at a small folding table they've set up in the cleared living room space. "Probably just a kid from another cabin," Sarah says, though they both know there are no other cabins for miles around. "Or maybe your imagination. This place is enough to make anyone start seeing things." She smiles to soften her words, but her eyes linger uneasily on the darkening windows, and she jumps slightly at a sudden creak from the old structure. Scout refuses to settle that evening, pacing between Ethan's sleeping bag and the front door, occasionally stopping to stare intently at the oak cabinet with its mysterious padlock. By the time Ethan falls into an uneasy sleep, the dog has finally laid down, though his ears remain alert, twitching at every sound. The dream comes suddenly. Ethan is standing in the clearing where he saw the boy. But it's different. The trees are younger, the path well maintained. 5 children stand in a circle, holding hands, their faces turned upward to a night sky blazing with impossibly bright stars arranged in patterns he doesn't recognize. At the center of their circle is a device, something like the strange compass he glimpsed among the junk in the cabin, but newer, gleaming in the starlight. A man stands nearby, writing frantically in a journal, identical to the one Ethan found. There's a dog, too, a German shepherd that looks eerily like Scout, standing alert at the edge of the clearing. Then a flash of blue light, so bright it burns, and the children begin to fade, becoming transparent, their screams silent, but their mouths open in terror. Ethan wakes with a gasp to the sound of tapping against his window. Scout stands at attention beside his sleeping bag, ears forward but eerily silent. Through the glass, Ethan sees nothing but darkness. The tapping comes again, 3 distinct raps, then silence, then 3 more. His heart pounding, he untangles himself from his sleeping bag, moving carefully so as not to wake his mother. Scout follows, pressing against his leg as Ethan approaches the window. The dog unusually silent, as if understanding the need for stealth. When he finally works up the courage to peer through the glass, he finds strange symbols etched in the condensation on the outside of the glass, glowing faintly in the moonlight. They look like no language Ethan has ever seen, angular, complex designs that seem to shift subtly even as he stares at them. Reaching out, he traces one symbol with his finger from the inside of the glass, and a jolt, like static electricity, shoots through his hand. Scout whines softly, nosing at Ethan's palm as if checking he's unharmed. For the rest of the night, Ethan lies awake, staring at the ceiling, the symbols burned into his memory. Scout keeps vigil beside him, both of them listening to the cabin's strange murmurs and the distant hooting of an owl that sounds almost like laughter. By morning, the symbols have vanished from the window, leaving no trace of their existence. Ethan might believe he dreamed it all if not for the lingering sensation in his fingertips, a faint numbness like the aftermath of touching a live wire. Later that day, while organizing a pile of discarded books, Ethan discovers the same symbols written on a faded piece of paper tucked between the pages of an astronomy textbook from 1963. His hands tremble as he carefully unfolds the paper, revealing not just the symbols but a diagram of the night sky with stars connected in patterns matching those from his dream. While his mother drives into the nearest town for supplies, Ethan decides to focus on the mysterious oak cabinet that so disturbs Scout. He's been circling it for days, watching how the German shepherd refuses to come near it, how his loyal dog will flatten his ears and back away whenever Ethan approaches the heavy wooden furniture piece. Today, with Sarah gone for at least 2 hours, he finally has his chance to investigate properly. "It's just a cabinet," he tells Scout, who watches anxiously from across the room, tail tucked low. Nothing to be scared of. But his reassurances sound hollow, even to his own ears, as he kneels before the padlock. The lock is old but sturdy, its metal tarnished but intact. Among the tools Ethan found in the shed yesterday, a rusty hammer and screwdriver seem the most promising for breaking it open. He works methodically, just as his father taught him, positioning the screwdriver's tip against the lock's mechanism and striking it firmly with the hammer. Scout paces nervously as Ethan works, occasionally letting out soft whines that sound almost like words. After several minutes of effort, the lock finally gives way with a satisfying snap, falling to the floor with a heavy thunk. Ethan pauses, his heart racing, suddenly uncertain if he should continue. The memory of the strange symbols, the boy in the woods, the midnight tapping, all of it converges in this moment, a warning he can't quite decipher. Taking a deep breath, he pulls open the heavy doors, revealing not more junk, but a carefully organized collection of scientific equipment. Maps, marked with strange coordinates, specimen jars containing soil samples, and an old reel-to-reel recorder. Each item is meticulously labeled in the same handwriting as the journal. Neat block letters, identifying locations and dates from the early 1960 seconds. On the bottom shelf sits a strange compass-like device with multiple dials that doesn't point north but seems to track something else entirely, its needle quivering slightly even as it rests in the cabinet. When Ethan lifts it, Scout suddenly approaches, his earlier fear replaced by intense interest. The dog paws at the device and whines with unusual urgency, his eyes fixed on the gently vibrating needle. "What is it, boy? What's this thing?" Ethan turns the device over in his hands, noting how it differs from an ordinary compass. Instead of the cardinal directions, the dial face is marked with symbols similar to those he saw on the window, and concentric rings of numbers that seem to measure something beyond simple direction. Curious, Ethan turns one of the small brass dials on the side. Immediately, the needle jumps, spinning wildly before settling on a new orientation, pointing directly at the floor. At the same moment, the blue light beneath the floorboards pulses brighter. No longer just a hint, but a definite glow emanating from between the wooden slats. Scout barks once, sharply, then presses his nose to the floor where the light shines through. Ethan sets the compass device on the ground and drops to his hands and knees, peering through the gap in the floorboards. The light pulses in a regular rhythm, like a heartbeat, illuminating what appears to be a small metal door set into the foundation of the cabin. "There's something under the house," Ethan whispers, excitement and apprehension mingling in his voice. Scout whines in response, pawing at the floorboards as if trying to dig through them. The sound of tires on gravel outside signals his mother's return, earlier than expected. Hurriedly, Ethan places the compass back in the cabinet, but leaves the doors open. There's no way to hide what he's discovered now. As Sarah's footsteps approach the cabin, Scout's ears perk up, but his attention remains divided between Ethan and the glowing light beneath the floor. His posture alert but no longer fearful. Whatever secrets the cabin holds, they are beginning to reveal themselves, one mysterious piece at a time. A local forest ranger, Hank Collins, visits the cabin late that afternoon, his green truck pulling up beside Sarah's as she unloads groceries. He's a tall, lean man in his 50s with weathered skin and eyes that seem to notice everything at once. "Just checking in on the new residents," he explains with a smile that doesn't quite reach those observant eyes. "We don't get many people moving into this part of the mountain." Sarah invites him in for coffee, seemingly relieved to have another adult to talk to after days of isolation with only Ethan for company. Ranger Collins steps inside, removing his wide-brimmed hat, his gaze immediately sweeping the room in a way that feels less like casual curiosity and more like a deliberate search. His eyes linger particularly on the now open cabinet, a slight frown creasing his forehead. Scout positions himself between the ranger and Ethan, his posture rigid, a continuous low growl vibrating in his chest that no amount of scolding from Sarah can quiet. "That's quite a protective dog you've got there," Collins remarks, keeping his distance from the German Shepherd. "Good to have up here. We've had bear activity in the area recently." He accepts a cup of coffee from Sarah, asking casual questions about their move and how they're settling in. But Ethan notices how the conversation keeps circling back to the cabin itself, to the previous owner. "Old Wilson was quite a character," Collins says, stirring his coffee slowly. "Brilliant man, but got strange in his later years. Started talking about all sorts of things, lights in the sky, disturbances in the forest, children that weren't children." He glances at Ethan when he says this last part, as if gauging his reaction. "People thought he'd gone mad, of course. We found some of his journals," Sarah mentions, and Ethan tenses, wishing she hadn't revealed that. "Fascinating reading, if a bit eccentric." Collins nods, his expression carefully neutral. "I'd be interested in seeing those sometime. For the historical record, you understand." Before leaving, the ranger delivers what sounds like a friendly warning but carries an undercurrent of something more serious. "You might want to stay near the cabin for the time being, especially at night. The bears are hungry this time of year, and the mountain can be disorienting if you don't know it well." At the door, he pauses, turning back with a seemingly casual question. "By the way, have you found any unusual devices among Wilson's belongings? He was always tinkering with strange equipment. Some of it might be valuable to collectors." Ethan feels Scout pressing against his leg, the dog's growl now almost inaudible but still present. "Nothing special," Sarah answers before Ethan can speak. "Just a lot of junk, really." Collins nods, his eyes flicking once more to the open cabinet before settling his hat back on his head. "Well, you let me know if you do find anything interesting." Wilson had quite a reputation in scientific circles back in the day. As the ranger's truck disappears down the mountain road, Sarah turns to Ethan with a puzzled expression. What was Scout's problem? He's never acted like that with strangers before. Ethan shrugs, not willing to share his suspicions about Collins or the strange compass device now hidden under his mattress. That night, Ethan overhears his mother on the phone, her voice tense as she stands outside on the porch seeking a signal. "I don't know, Lisa. Something about this place feels off. And Ethan keeps talking about seeing a boy in the woods, but there's no one for miles." She pauses, listening. "Yes. Scout's been acting strange too. I'm starting to wonder if this whole thing was a mistake." The next morning, Scout refuses to come inside for breakfast. Ethan finds him digging frantically at the edge of the property, near an ancient lightning-struck pine whose blackened trunk splits halfway up before continuing toward the sky in twisted, gnarled branches. The dog's powerful paws have already created a significant hole in the soft earth, his determination evident in the focused intensity with which he works. "What is it, boy? What did you find?" Ethan asks, kneeling beside the excavation. Scout pauses just long enough to glance at him before resuming his digging with renewed vigor. After a few more minutes, Ethan hears a dull, metallic clunk as Scout's paw strikes something solid. Reaching into the hole, brushing aside loose dirt, Ethan's fingers touch something smooth and cold, a metal box about the size of a hardcover book buried at the base of the lightning-struck tree. The container is made of tin, its surface corroded but intact, sealed with what appears to have once been waterproof tape now turned brittle with age. Scout sits back, panting from his exertion but looking immensely satisfied, his dark eyes fixed on Ethan's hands as the boy carefully extracts the box from its hiding place. With fingers trembling slightly, Ethan peels away the deteriorated tape and lifts the lid. Inside, cushioned by what might have once been a child's handkerchief, lies a collection of small items. A toy soldier made of lead, its paint chipped but still showing the bright red of a uniform. A smooth stone with a natural hole through its center. A tarnished silver whistle on a frayed cord. A folded piece of paper, and at the bottom, a faded photograph that makes Ethan's breath catch in his throat. Carefully, he lifts the photograph into the morning light. It shows 5 children standing in front of the cabin, which looks much newer and well-maintained, its porch uncluttered, its windows intact and gleaming in what appears to be summer sunshine. The date written in faded ink on the back reads, July 15, 1963. But what makes Ethan's heart race is the face of one particular boy standing slightly apart from the others. The same boy he saw watching him from the forest edge. The same solemn expression, the same old-fashioned clothes. The resemblance is unmistakable. Yet the photograph is nearly 60 years old. Even more disturbing is what stands in the background of the image, partially obscured by the children but clearly visible. A German shepherd that looks eerily similar to Scout, with the same distinctive markings, the same intelligent eyes, the same alert posture. With shaking hands, Ethan unfolds the piece of paper from the box. Written in a child's careful script are 6 words that send a chill down his spine. Don't trust the ranger. Find us. Scout whines softly, nudging Ethan's hand with his nose, then looks toward the forest where the boy appeared days earlier. The meaning seems clear. Whatever mystery surrounds the cabin, the children in the photograph, and the strange devices left by the previous owner, Ranger Collins is somehow involved, and not in a way that suggests he can be trusted. Returning to the cabin, Ethan carefully hides the metal box under his sleeping bag. Not ready to share his discovery with his mother, who's already anxious enough about their new home. Scout stays especially close for the remainder of the day, even following Ethan into the bathroom when he showers, as if afraid to let the boy out of his sight for even a moment. That night, the tapping returns to the window, but when Ethan looks, there are no symbols, only the pale face of the boy from the photograph, his hand raised in a gesture that might be a greeting or a warning before he once again vanishes into the darkness. When Sarah announces they need to leave a day early due to an approaching storm, Ethan feels a surge of panic. 3 days isn't enough time to solve the cabin's mystery, not with so many pieces still missing from the puzzle. We can't leave yet, he protests, trying to keep the desperation from his voice. I'm just starting to organize all the stuff. Sarah shakes her head, checking the weather radar on her phone in the one spot near the window where she can get a single bar of reception. This storm looks serious, Ethan. They're saying possible flooding on the mountain roads. We need to get down before it hits tomorrow night. She doesn't understand. How could she? He hasn't shared the photograph, the symbols, the boy in the woods, or the compass device he now keeps with him at all times. While his mother packs their essential belongings, Ethan returns to the oak cabinet, Scout following closely. Moving the final pieces of equipment out, he examines the back panel carefully, running his fingers along its edges, searching for anything unusual. His persistence is rewarded when he feels a slight irregularity in the wood, a seam almost invisible to the eye but detectable to careful fingers. Pressing gently, he feels the panel shift slightly. There's something here, Scout, he whispers, excitement temporarily overriding his anxiety about their impending departure. He applies more pressure, and with a soft click, a section of the cabinet's back panel swings inward, revealing a space behind that shouldn't exist according to the cabin's outer dimensions. It's a small door, built directly into the wall, its edges cunningly concealed by the cabinet itself. The door has no handle, only a circular depression in its center that looks suspiciously like it might fit the base of the strange compass device. Scout whines anxiously but follows when Ethan, heart pounding, removes the compass from his pocket. The device seems to vibrate more strongly now, its needle spinning frantically before pointing directly at the hidden door. Taking a deep breath, Ethan places the compass into the circular depression. It fits perfectly, like a key in a lock, and when he turns it clockwise, he's rewarded with a series of mechanical clicks followed by the sound of sliding bolts. The door swings open on silent hinges, revealing a narrow staircase descending into darkness beneath the cabin. Cool air wafts up from below, carrying a faint metallic scent and something else, something that makes Scout's ears perk forward with interest rather than fear. Ethan? Sarah calls from the other room. Have you seen the flashlight? I need to check under the sink for leaks before we go. Thinking quickly, Ethan responds, I'll find it, Mom, while quietly closing the hidden door, leaving the compass in place. He'll have to wait until night, until his mother is asleep, before exploring whatever lies beneath the cabin. As he helps with the packing throughout the day, his mind races with possibilities. The children in the photograph, The journal entries about disturbances and watchers in the trees, the strange symbols, the boy who appears and disappears. All of it must connect to whatever waits in the darkness below. Scout seems to sense his anticipation, staying closer than ever, occasionally glancing at the cabinet with the hidden door, as if to make sure it remains undisturbed until they can return to it. The approaching storm makes its presence known with distant thunder that grows steadily closer as darkness falls, a fitting accompaniment to the mystery unfolding within the walls of the old cabin. Under cover of night, with the storm drawing closer and his mother finally asleep, Ethan slips out of his sleeping bag. Scout is instantly alert, rising silently to follow as the boy carefully navigates the cluttered room by the faint blue glow of the compass that still sits in the hidden door's lock. The device pulses more urgently now, as if encouraging haste. Retrieving a flashlight from his backpack, Ethan eases the door open again, wincing at every small creak from the old hinges. The stairs revealed by the thin beam of light are wooden at first, then transition to stone as they descend, curving slightly to the left in a way that suggests they lead not just below the cabin but extending outward beneath the surrounding forest. Scout hesitates only briefly at the top of the stairs before taking the lead, his superior night vision making him a more confident guide than Ethan with his flashlight. The temperature drops noticeably as they descend, the air growing cooler and taking on that distinctive metallic smell Ethan noticed earlier, mixed with the earthier sense of stone and soil. After what feels like dozens of steps but is probably fewer, they reach the bottom and find themselves in a hidden basement laboratory that defies all expectations. The space is large, far larger than the cabin above, with a ceiling supported by both natural stone pillars and wooden beams, tables covered with maps of the night sky, strange electrical equipment, and glass containers filled with soil samples line the walls. Everything is coated with a fine layer of dust, undisturbed for what must be decades, yet there's a sense of careful preservation, as if the room has been waiting patiently for someone to return. Most surprising of all is the faint illumination that doesn't come from Ethan's flashlight, but from thin lines of that same blue light they've seen through the floorboards, running through the stone itself in patterns that remind Ethan of circuit boards or star maps. Scout moves purposefully across the laboratory, past equipment whose functions Ethan can only guess at, heading straight for a metal filing cabinet tucked against the far wall. The dog paws insistently at the lowest drawer, looking back at Ethan with clear expectation in his intelligent eyes. "You want me to open this?" Ethan whispers, though there's no need for quiet so far below ground. The drawer slides open easily despite years of disuse, revealing dozens of manila folders labeled with dates ranging from 1957 to 1963. Each contains reports, photographs, and hand-drawn diagrams that Ethan can barely comprehend, references to quantum tunneling, temporal displacement, and interspatial gateways in the precise handwriting he now recognizes as belonging to Wilson, the cabin's previous owner. The final file, dated just weeks before the cabin was abandoned, contains a report whose title page makes Ethan's heart skip: Project Homecoming. Preliminary success after 37 failed attempts. Inside are photographs of the same 5 children from the buried tin box, standing in a circle in the forest clearing where Ethan saw the boy, each holding what appears to be a smaller version of the compass device. The final page contains a handwritten note. Success after all these years. The children are coming back through, but something else is trying to follow them. God help us if it succeeds. Scout whines softly, pressing against Ethan's leg as if sensing his growing unease. The implications are staggering. Wilson wasn't just a reclusive collector or amateur scientist. He was conducting experiments involving children, experiments that apparently went terribly wrong. And somehow, incredibly, those same children are still here. Or at least one of them is, appearing to Ethan from the forest after 60 years. A sudden crack of thunder directly overhead, so powerful it makes the stone walls vibrate, reminds Ethan of the approaching storm and his mother sleeping unaware in the cabin above. Gathering the most important-looking documents, he tucks them into his shirt and signals Scout to lead the way back upstairs. Whatever happened in 1963, whatever is happening now with the boy in the woods and the strange symbols, the storm won't wait for Ethan to unravel the mystery. and he needs to warn his mother before it's too late. Racing back upstairs, Ethan finds his mother frantically searching for him, her face pale in the beam of her own flashlight. "Ethan, where were you? I woke up and you were gone." The relief in her voice quickly shifts to confusion as she notices the dust coating his clothes and the papers clutched against his chest. "What is all this? Where did you go?" Before he can formulate a response, a violent gust of wind slams against the cabin, making the whole structure shudder. The storm has arrived, faster and more powerful than predicted, tree branches scraping against the roof like clawed fingers seeking entry. Rain begins to hammer down, first as scattered heavy drops, and then as a solid wall of water that obscures the windows and drums, a chaotic rhythm on the old shingles. "We need to talk," Ethan begins, but another crash of thunder drowns his words, followed immediately by a flash of lightning so bright it illuminates the entire cabin despite the blocked windows. The electricity, which had been unreliable at best, fails completely, leaving them dependent on their flashlights. In the sudden stillness after the thunderclap, Scout's warning growl is clearly audible, his attention fixed on the windows where the rain streams down like tears. "Something's wrong with this place, Mom." Ethan tries again, spreading the documents on the floor between them. The previous owner, Wilson, he was doing experiments here, something about bringing children back from somewhere, and I think he succeeded, because I've seen one of them in the woods. Sarah's expression shifts from confusion to concern. "Ethan, honey, I know this place is strange, but there's a rational explanation for everything. Old houses make noises, and forests play tricks on the eyes, especially for a city kid like you." She picks up one of the photographs, studying it in the beam of her flashlight. "These are just old pictures of some local children who probably visited Wilson. Nothing mysterious about that." Her dismissal might have been convincing if not for what happens next. A violent thunderclap shakes the cabin, sending piles of junk crashing to the floor, and in the momentary flash of lightning that follows, silhouettes of multiple children appear in every window, watching them from outside. Not just one boy, but 5 distinct figures, their faces pressed against the glass despite the driving rain, their expressions a mixture of hope and desperation. Sarah screams, dropping her flashlight, which rolls across the floor, its beam creating wild, dancing shadows as Scout launches into frenzied barking. The silhouettes vanish as quickly as they appeared, leaving only the sound of rain and wind and Sarah's ragged breathing. Did you see that?" she whispers, reaching blindly for Ethan in the darkness. "Tell me you saw that too." Ethan nods, before realizing she can't see him in the dim light. "Yes, those are the children from the photograph. They've been trying to contact me since we arrived." He retrieves her fallen flashlight, handing it back to her with steady hands that surprise even him. "We need to help them, Mom. Something happened here in 1963, something bad, and they're still trapped because of it." Sarah's skepticism has evaporated, replaced by a mother's instinctive fear. "No, what we need to do is leave, right now, storm or no storm." She begins gathering their essential belongings, moving with the efficiency of panic. "This was a mistake. The whole thing was a mistake. We'll go to your aunt's house until we figure something else out." Ethan knows there's no point arguing, not with what she's just seen. But as he helps her pack, his mind is racing, trying to connect the fragments of the puzzle, the compass device, the hidden laboratory, the strange blue light, the children at the windows. Whatever is happening, he's certain that simply leaving won't solve it. The cabin has chosen them, or at least chosen him, and the storm is just the beginning of what promises to be a long and terrifying night. Scout's barking wakes them at midnight. They had given up trying to leave when they found the mountain road already flooded, forcing them to return to the cabin and wait out the worst of the storm. Now, huddled together in their sleeping bags, they're jolted awake by the dog's frantic warning. The cabin door stands open despite having been locked, swinging in the wind and allowing rain to pool on the wooden floor. Muddy footprints, small, like a child's, lead from the doorway to the hidden basement entrance, which now gapes open, the compass device still fitted in its lock, but glowing much more intensely than before. "Stay here," Sarah commands, reaching for the baseball bat she brought in from the car earlier. But Ethan is already moving, following Scout, who trots purposefully along the trail of muddy prints. "Ethan! Don't!" his mother hisses, hurrying after them. The footprints lead directly to the basement stairs, then down into the darkness of the hidden laboratory. With flashlights cutting uncertain paths through the gloom, they descend together, Scout leading the way with confident familiarity. The laboratory has changed since Ethan's earlier visit. The blue light in the stone walls pulses more rapidly now, almost stroboscopic in its intensity, and the equipment on the tables hums with electricity despite the power outage above. Most notably, the 5 children from the photograph now stand in a loose circle in the center of the room, their forms strangely translucent, as if they're not fully present in the physical world. The boy Ethan recognized from the forest steps forward, his expression solemn but his eyes bright with a hope that transcends the decades separating them. "You found us," he says, his voice sounding distant and echoing slightly, like a radio not quite tuned to the right frequency. "We knew you would." Sarah gasps, her grip on the bat tightening though she makes no move to use it. "Who are you?" and she demands, instinctively positioning herself between the apparitions and her son. "What do you want with Ethan?" The boy looks past her, speaking directly to Ethan. "My name is Daniel. These are my friends, Emily, James, Grace, and Thomas." Each child nods as they're introduced, their movements slightly out of sync with reality, creating a disturbing lag effect. "We've been trapped here since 1963, since Dr. Wilson's experiment went wrong. We can't leave, can't move on, can't go home. We exist between moments, between worlds." Scout whines softly, moving to stand beside Daniel with a familiarity that shocks both Ethan and Sarah. The dog looks back at them as if to say, "It's okay, they're friends. How is this possible?" Sarah whispers, her scientific mind struggling against what her eyes are clearly seeing. "Time doesn't work that way. People don't just get trapped between moments." Daniel smiles sadly. Dr. Wilson didn't think so either, until he succeeded. He was trying to create a gateway, a door between dimensions. "We were helping him. We were all orphans, wards of the state, kids nobody would miss if something went wrong." His expression darkens. "And something did go wrong. The gateway opened, but it wasn't stable. It pulled us in, trapped us in the in-between. We've been here ever since, watching the world move on without us, unable to fully manifest except under certain conditions." Ethan feels the strange compass in his pocket begin to vibrate and emit a soft blue light, responding to the presence of the children or perhaps to something else. Something unseen but definitely present in the laboratory with them. "That's why I bought this place," he realizes aloud. "Somehow you were calling to me, guiding me here." Daniel nods, his form flickering slightly as a particularly violent thunderclap shakes the cabin above. "We've been waiting for someone who could see us, someone who could help us finish what Dr. Wilson started. He spent the rest of his life trying to bring us back, but he died before he could complete his work." The boy's gaze shifts to Sarah, his eyes ancient despite his youthful appearance. "We don't have much time. The conditions are right tonight. The storm, the cosmic alignment, the presence of someone with the sight." He looks back at Ethan. "You need to help us finish the process. You need to bring us home." Morning brings eerie calm after the storm. The children have vanished, returning to whatever twilight realm holds them captive, but their muddy footprints remain as concrete evidence of their nocturnal visit. Sarah sits at the small folding table, a cup of cold coffee untouched before her, staring at the photographs and documents spread across the surface. "This can't be real," she murmurs, though the conviction in her voice has faded considerably since witnessing the spectral children in the hidden laboratory. There has to be a scientific explanation. Ethan, exhausted from a night without sleep but too wired to rest, continues sorting through Wilson's records, looking for anything that might help them understand what happened in 1963 and how they might help Daniel and the others now. Scout maintains his vigil by the window, occasionally growling softly at something moving among the trees that neither Ethan nor Sarah can see. The sound of tires on wet gravel announces an unexpected visitor. Ranger Collins arrives unannounced, his truck splashing through muddy puddles as it pulls up to the cabin. "Just checking for storm damage," he calls as he approaches the porch, but his manner is different now, more insistent, less friendly. His eyes constantly scan the room during conversation, lingering particularly on the now opened cabinet with its revealed hidden door. "That's quite a discovery you've made," he remarks, nodding toward the basement entrance. Wilson was always secretive about his work. Sarah tenses, her protective instincts flaring. "We were just about to call someone about it, actually. Seems unsafe to have a hidden basement in a structure this old." Collins smiles thinly. "Well, that's why I'm here. Safety first." He moves further into the cabin, picking up one of the photographs still on the table. "I see you've been going through Wilson's things thoroughly." His tone is casual, but there's an edge to it that sets Scout on alert. The dog positioning himself between the Ranger and Ethan, a continuous low growl vibrating in his chest. Collins' gaze shifts to the muddy footprints still visible on the floor, his expression changing entirely. "You've had visitors," he states flatly, no longer bothering with the friendly pretense. "Has the boy appeared to you?" "Daniel?" Ethan and Sarah exchange startled glances at this confirmation that Collins knows far more than he's been letting on. "Why don't you tell us what you know about all this, Ranger Collins?" Sarah challenges, moving to stand beside Ethan, presenting a united front. "Because it seems like you've been less than honest with us from the start," Collins sighs, removing his hat and running a hand through his thinning hair. "What I know is that Wilson was messing with forces beyond his understanding, and it cost 5 children their lives, or something worse than death." He looks directly at Ethan. "What I know is that they're not children anymore. Not really. Not after 60 years in that in-between place Wilson created. And what I know for certain is that helping them come back, as they put it, would be the worst mistake you could possibly make." He steps closer, his voice dropping to an urgent whisper despite there being no one else to overhear. "They don't tell you about the entity, do they? The thing that's waiting on the other side of their so-called gateway. The thing that's been using them as bait all these years." Scout's growl intensifies, and Collins takes a step back, eyeing the German shepherd warily. "I need to search the house," he announces abruptly. "Officially, for storm damage and structural issues, but what I'm really looking for is a device, a prototype compass that Wilson created as a fail-safe. It's the key to making sure that Gateway stays closed permanently." Sarah stands straighter, her initial fear transforming into protective anger. "No, you will not search our home without a warrant. Whatever happened here in the past, this cabin belongs to Ethan now, and you have no right to enter without our permission, which I'm now withdrawing." Collins' face hardens. "You don't understand what you're dealing with. Those children might seem innocent, but they've been changed by their time in the in-between. They're not telling you everything." He backs toward the door, his hand hovering near his belt where Ethan notices, with a jolt of fear, what appears to be a holstered handgun partially concealed by his jacket. "I'll be back with proper authorization, Mrs. Parker. Don't do anything foolish in the meantime." As Collins' truck disappears down the muddy road, Sarah turns to Ethan, her face pale but determined. "Pack your things. We're leaving, now." Ethan knows arguing is pointless. His mother's mind is made up. As he stuffs clothes into his backpack, his thoughts race, trying to find a solution that doesn't involve abandoning Daniel and the others to their twilight existence. The compass device, which he retrieved from the hidden door after Collins left, sits heavy in his pocket, its blue glow visible even through the fabric of his jeans. Scout paces anxiously by the door, occasionally pausing to look back at Ethan with an expression that seems to ask, "What are we going to do?" 10 minutes, Ethan, that's all you've got," Sarah calls from outside, where she's loading the truck. "Just the essentials. We can come back for the rest later." But Ethan knows they won't be coming back, not if his mother has anything to say about it. With Sarah occupied outside, he seizes the opportunity to examine the compass more carefully. Each dial appears to represent a different measurement, not just direction but time, phase, and other markings he doesn't understand. The device feels warm in his hands, almost alive, its needle spinning erratically before settling on a position pointing toward the forest where he first saw Daniel. Remembering the diagrams in Wilson's notes, Ethan begins to adjust the dials, aligning them according to a configuration he'd seen repeated in several of the scientist's journal entries. The effect is immediate and startling. The compass projects a holographic map of the forest surrounding the cabin, a three-dimensional blue light display hovering in the air above the device. 5 glowing points form a pentagon around the central point representing the cabin itself, each marked with one of the strange symbols he saw etched on his window that night. Scout barks at the projection, not in alarm but with what sounds almost like recognition. The dog runs to the window, pawing to get out, his attention fixed on the forest beyond. Following his gaze, Ethan sees Daniel standing at the tree line, more solid in appearance than he was during the night, beckoning with urgent gestures. "We're running out of time," Ethan realizes, though he's not sure how he knows this. The compass seems to agree, its holographic display pulsing more rapidly, the 5 points of light blinking in sequence like a countdown. Making a split-second decision, Ethan stuffs the compass back in his pocket, grabs Wilson's journal and the most crucial documents, and heads for the door. "Mom," he calls, hoping to sound casual. "Scout needs to go out real quick. I'll just take him around back." Sarah, busy securing their belongings in the truck bed, barely looks up. "Make it fast. I want to be on the road in 5 minutes." Heart pounding, Ethan slips around the side of the cabin, Scout bounding ahead of him toward the waiting figure of Daniel. The boy, though still slightly transparent in the bright morning light, looks more present than Ethan has seen him before, his features clearer, his movements more natural. "You have to hurry," Daniel says without preamble. "Ranger Collins is coming back, and he's bringing others. They want to destroy the compass, seal us away forever." He points toward the forest. "The gateway can only be opened by activating all 5 anchor points with the compass. We have to do it now, while the energies from the storm are still active." Ethan hesitates, Collins' warning about the entity echoing in his mind. Daniel's expression flickers with what might be guilt, quickly replaced by urgency. Of course he'd say that. He's been trying to keep us trapped for decades. "Please, Ethan, we don't have much time. All we want is to go home." Scout whines, looking between Daniel and Ethan, as if trying to communicate something important. His loyalty clearly divided between the boy he knows and the spectral child from another time. The compass in Ethan's pocket grows warmer, its light pulsing faster, more insistently. He makes his decision. "I'll help you. Show me what to do." Daniel's face lights up with hope. "Follow me. The first anchor point is this way." He turns, moving deeper into the forest, with a fluid grace that seems almost to float above the muddy ground. Scout follows immediately, and Ethan, after one backward glance at the cabin where his mother is still loading the truck, hurries after them, the compass guiding him as surely as a lifeline connecting him to whatever mystery the mountain holds. Sarah's voice, calling his name from the cabin clearing, grows fainter as the trees close around him, leading him toward a destiny set in motion 60 years ago by a scientist who dared to reach beyond the boundaries of the known world, leaving 5 lost children to await a rescuer who would finally hear their call across the decades. Against his mother's orders, Ethan slips deeper into the forest with Scout and Daniel, the spectral boy leading them along what seems to be an invisible trail that only he can see. The forest is still dripping from the night storm, sunlight breaking through the canopy to create dazzling prisms in the water droplets, clinging to leaves and pine needles. "How much further?" Ethan asks, aware that his mother will soon discover his absence and begin searching for him. "Not far," Daniel replies, his voice sounding more solid than before, as if he's gaining substance the further they travel from the cabin. "The first anchor point is just beyond that ridge." Scout trots ahead, no longer waiting for Ethan but following Daniel with absolute confidence, occasionally looking back as if to urge Ethan to hurry. The compass in his pocket vibrates more strongly with each step, and when he pulls it out to check their direction, he sees the holographic map has changed, now showing their position moving toward the nearest glowing point. They arrive at a small clearing, perfectly circular and ringed by ancient oaks, whose massive trunks suggest they've stood sentinel for centuries. In the center lies a weather-worn stone marker, covered in the same strange symbols Ethan saw on his window, and in Wilson's journals. The ground around the marker is carpeted with an unbroken ring of small white mushrooms, a fairy circle, Ethan remembers from old stories, supposedly a portal to other realms. "This is it," Daniel says, stopping at the edge of the mushroom ring. "The first anchor point. You need to place the compass on the stone and align it to the symbol carved there." Ethan approaches cautiously, feeling a strange resistance as he steps over the mushroom ring, like pushing through invisible cobwebs. The stone marker stands about waist-high, its flat top bearing a deeply carved symbol that matches one of those displayed on the compass face. Scout circles the stone, sniffing carefully, then sits beside it, looking up at Ethan expectantly. "What happens when I align it?" Ethan asks, suddenly hesitant despite having come this far. "The anchor point activates," Daniel explains, staying outside the mushroom ring. "It creates a stable connection point for the gateway. All 5 points need to be activated before the gateway can fully open and let us through." His form flickers slightly, like a television with poor reception. "Please hurry. I can't maintain this form for long outside the cabin area." Swallowing his apprehension, Ethan places the compass on the stone. The device immediately comes alive, spinning wildly before settling with its needle pointing toward the symbol. Carefully, Ethan turns the dials until they align with markings that somehow make sense to him despite their alien appearance. There's a soft click, and the blue light within the compass intensifies, spreading outward to encompass the stone marker and the entire mushroom ring in a shimmering azure glow. The ground beneath Ethan's feet trembles slightly, and for a moment, he glimpses something through the veil of blue light. Another forest, similar but subtly different, where the trees are younger and the colors more vivid. Then the vision fades, leaving only the compass pulsing with renewed energy on the stone. "It worked!" Daniel exclaims, his form temporarily more solid. "The anchor point is active. We need to move to the next one quickly." As Ethan retrieves the compass, he notices Scout's behavior has changed. The dog is no longer focused on Daniel, but has turned to stare intently at a point deeper in the forest, his ears pricked forward, body tense but not aggressive. Following Scout's gaze, Ethan glimpses movement between distant trees, a flash of pale skin and dark clothing that vanishes as quickly as it appeared. "Daniel," he begins, "is there someone else out here?" The spectral boy hesitates before answering, his expression unreadable. The others are waiting at the final anchor point. "What you saw might be one of them, or—" He trails off, looking troubled. The in-between place changes things. It might be something else, something drawn by the activation. Before Ethan can press for clarification, Scout barks and races after the distant figure, forcing Ethan to follow deeper into the forest, the compass clutched tightly in his hand, and Daniel's flickering form hurrying beside him, their path now dictated not by the spectral boy's guidance, but by the German shepherd's determined pursuit of something only he seems fully aware of. Scout leads Ethan through increasingly dense undergrowth, following a path that seems to wind aimlessly through the forest but somehow avoids the steepest terrain and thickest brush. Daniel flickers alongside them, occasionally fading almost to invisibility before reappearing, his form growing weaker with distance from the cabin but his determination undiminished. "Scout knows the way," he says when Ethan asks if they're still heading toward the next anchor point. He remembers, even after all this time. The statement makes little sense until they emerge into a hidden valley where ancient trees form a natural amphitheater around a circular clearing much larger than the first. Here, 4 children stand in a circle around a 5th empty space, their forms more substantial than Daniel's, but still slightly translucent, dressed in oddly old-fashioned clothes that match the photograph Ethan found in the buried metal box. They look up in unison as Ethan enters the clearing, their expressions a mixture of hope and wariness. Daniel steps forward, introducing himself properly for the first time. "I'm Daniel Wilcox. These are Emily Chen, James Taylor, Grace Sullivan, and Thomas Blackwood." Each child nods as they're named, studying Ethan with intense curiosity. "We've been waiting 62 years for someone to bring the key," Daniel continues, pointing to the compass in Ethan's hand. "Dr. Wilson spent his life trying to bring us back, but he couldn't complete the work before he died. Emily, a serious-looking girl with long dark hair, steps forward. "We were part of an experiment in 1963, she explains, her voice carrying the same slight echo as Daniel's. Dr. Wilson believed he had discovered a way to create doorways between dimensions, even between points in time. We were his assistants, orphans from the county home, bright kids with no families to ask difficult questions if something went wrong. And something did go wrong," James adds. A tall boy whose freckled face can't disguise a deep sadness in his eyes. The gateway opened, but it wasn't stable. It collapsed while we were still connected to it, trapping us in a kind of pocket dimension, a bubble of time separate from the normal flow. Grace, the smallest of the group, pipes up. "We've been here ever since, watching the world move on without us, only able to partially manifest under specific conditions, during storms, or astronomical alignments, or when someone with the sight is present." She looks pointedly at Ethan. "Someone like you." Thomas, who has remained silent until now, finally speaks. "Dr. Wilson realized what happened and devoted the rest of his life to trying to bring us back. The compass you're holding is his masterpiece, a device that can stabilize the gateway long enough for us to cross back over completely." Ethan's head spins with questions. But one detail nags at him more than the others. Daniel said Scout remembers the way, even after all this time. What did he mean? The children exchange glances, and Daniel sighs, crouching down to Scout's level. The German Shepherd approaches him without hesitation, and to Ethan's shock, the boy embraces the dog with tears in his eyes, calling him Rex. "Scout is actually my dog from 1963, Daniel explains, his voice thick with emotion. Or rather, Rex was. Somehow, when the gateway collapsed, he wasn't fully trapped like we were. He exists in both worlds, aging much slower than normal, moving between time periods. He's been waiting all these years, somehow knowing that you would come to help complete Dr. Wilson's work." This explains Scout's strange behavior in the cabin, his immediate recognition of Daniel, his determination to lead Ethan to the children. "But that's impossible," Ethan protests, even as he watches Scout, or Rex, pressing his head against Daniel's chest with obvious recognition and affection. "Scout has been with me since he was a puppy, 3 years ago." Grace nods. "Time works differently in the in-between. What's decades for you might be moments for us, or for Rex. He's been your loyal companion, but he's also been waiting for this moment, for the chance to complete the circle and bring us all home." As if to confirm her words, Scout turns to look at Ethan, his dark eyes filled with an intelligence and awareness that suddenly seems far older than any normal dog could possess. The compass in Ethan's hand pulses in sync with a similar blue glow now emanating from the center of the children's circle, the two lights calling to each other across the dimensional barrier that has held these children captive for over 6 decades. "We don't have much time," Thomas warns, glancing nervously at the sky where clouds are beginning to gather again. "The Ranger knows what we're trying to do, and he'll try to stop us. We need to activate all 5 anchor points before midnight, when the stars align as they did in 1963. Only then can the gateway stabilize enough for us to cross back over." As the children explain more about their predicament and the importance of the 5 anchor points, Ethan can't tear his eyes away from Scout, or Rex, who moves comfortably between him and Daniel as if bridging 2 worlds. "I don't understand," Ethan says, watching as the German Shepherd nuzzles Daniel's hand, then returns to press reassuringly against his leg. "If Scout is actually Rex from 1963, how did he come to be with me? How did he end up as my dog?" Daniel's expression softens as he looks at the animal who has clearly been his beloved companion across decades. "After the accident, when we were trapped, Rex wasn't fully pulled in like we were. Dr. Wilson theorized that animals perceive reality differently than humans. They exist more in the moment, less bound by linear time. Rex became a kind of bridge between our world and yours, able to move between them in ways we couldn't." Emily continues the explanation, her scientific understanding reminiscent of Wilson's precise notes. "He doesn't age normally because he doesn't exist fully in either timeline. He's been waiting, watching for someone who could see us, someone who could help. When he found you, he knew you were the one. Memories flood Ethan's mind. Finding Scout as a seemingly abandoned puppy near their old home 3 years ago. The way the dog had always been unusually intelligent and protective. How he had somehow guided them to purchase this specific cabin in a county auction where no one else would bid. But he looks like a normal German shepherd, Ethan protests weakly. Even as he recalls Scout's many unexplainable behaviors, Thomas smiles sadly. He is a normal German shepherd, just one who happens to exist partially outside of conventional time. Dr. Wilson's notes suggested that Rex might be reborn again and again, maintaining some essence of himself through each cycle, drawn repeatedly to the place and people connected to our fate. As if understanding they're talking about him, Scout, Rex, sits between Ethan and Daniel, looking from one to the other with clear affection for both. He's been your loyal protector, Grace says gently, but he's also been waiting for this moment, for the chance to reunite with Daniel and help us all find our way home. The implications are staggering. If what they're saying is true, then Scout has been more than just a pet or companion. He's been a guardian with a purpose, guiding Ethan toward this moment, this responsibility. He led me to the buried box, Ethan remembers aloud, and to the hidden compass. He knew where everything was because he was there when it was hidden. Daniel nods, his translucent hand resting on Scout's head in a gesture so natural it makes Ethan's heart ache. Rex was Dr. Wilson's assistant too, in his own way. He witnessed everything, understood in his dog way what was happening. When Wilson realized he was running out of time, dying before he could complete his work, Rex became part of his contingency plan. James, who has been watching the sky with increasing concern, interrupts. We need to move. The next anchor point isn't far, but the ranger will have noticed the activation of the first point by now. He has instruments, left over from Wilson's work, that can detect the energy signatures. Ethan hesitates, Collins' warning still nagging at him. The ranger said there's something else trying to come through the gateway, something dangerous that's using you as bait. Is that true? The children exchange glances, a shadow passing across their faces. Not exactly, Daniel finally answers, his voice careful. The gateway connects to a place between dimensions, what Dr. Wilson called the void. There are things that exist there. Things that have been trying to find their way into our world for a very long time. They were drawn to the energy of Wilson's experiment, but they're not using us. They're trapped, just like we are, just on the other side of the barrier. He meets Ethan's gaze directly. The ranger wants you to believe we're dangerous because it's easier than admitting he and the others are afraid of what might come through with us. But Dr. Wilson found a way to filter the gateway, to ensure only we can pass through if the proper sequence is followed. Scout whines softly, nudging Ethan's hand as if encouraging him to make a decision. Looking into the dog's familiar eyes, Ethan sees the same loyal companion who has stood by him through every difficulty since his father's death. But now he also sees something more, an ancient wisdom and purpose that transcends the simple bond between boy and pet. Whatever Scout is, whatever strange twist of time and dimension has brought him to Ethan's side, his trust in the animal is absolute. Okay, he says finally, gripping the compass tightly. Let's go to the next anchor point. But my mom will be looking for me by now. We need to hurry. Returning to the cabin after activating 3 of the 5 anchor points, Ethan and Scout find Ranger Collins confronting Sarah in the clearing out front. The ranger's truck is parked haphazardly beside their own vehicle, its doors still open as if he arrived in a hurry and barely took time to stop before approaching the house. Sarah stands on the porch, her arms crossed defensively, while Collins gestures animatedly, his voice carrying clearly through the still afternoon air. It's dangerous, Mrs. Parker. Your son doesn't understand what he's meddling with. Those children aren't what they appear to be. Scout growls softly as they watch from the edge of the forest, his hackles rising at the sight of the ranger. Ethan puts a steadying hand on the dog's back, signaling him to stay quiet while they assess the situation. Daniel and the others have remained behind at the 3rd anchor point, their forms too weak to maintain cohesion near the ranger. who seems to have some influence over their manifestation. Ethan is just exploring the property, Sarah responds, though her voice betrays her own worry. He's with his dog. They'll be back soon. Collins shakes his head impatiently. You don't understand. I've been monitoring this area for decades. I worked with Wilson on the original experiment in '63. I know what's out there, what's trying to come through. This confirmation of the Rangers' deeper involvement catches Ethan by surprise. Collins continues, his composure slipping to reveal genuine fear beneath. Wilson thought he could control it, thought he could open doorways between dimensions without consequences. 5 children paid the price for his hubris, and now your son is about to make the same mistake. He reaches inside his jacket, pulling out not the handgun Ethan feared earlier, but a small device that resembles a simplified version of the compass. This detector shows 3 anchor points have already been activated. Once all 5 are connected, the gateway will open, and what comes through won't just be those children. Sarah's skepticism is visibly wavering in the face of Collins's certainty. What exactly are you saying these children are? They were human once, Collins admits. But 60 years in the void changes things. They've been influenced, corrupted by the entities that exist there. The children you see are just echoes, puppets being used to lure someone into completing the gateway. He steps closer to Sarah, his voice dropping. Wilson realized the truth too late. On his deathbed, he made me promise to keep the gateway closed, to protect this world from what waits on the other side. The compassion in his voice sounds genuine, making Ethan doubt his earlier certainty about the Rangers' motives. I know this sounds impossible, Mrs. Parker, but your son is in grave danger, and so is everyone else if that gateway opens fully. Sarah looks torn, glancing toward the forest, where Ethan disappeared hours earlier. If what you're saying is true, how do we stop it? How do we find Ethan? Collins' answer sends a chill down Ethan's spine. The compass device is the key. It needs to be destroyed, the anchor points deactivated. Once that's done, the gateway will collapse permanently. He hesitates, then adds, with obvious reluctance, as for your son, if he's already under their influence, we may need to consider more drastic measures to prevent him from completing the sequence. The implication is clear enough to make Scout growl again, louder this time. Collins's head snaps up at the sound, his eyes narrowing as he scans the tree line. They're here, he says, reaching once more into his jacket and this time withdrawing a very real handgun. Mrs. Parker, go inside the cabin, now. Sarah doesn't move, her maternal instincts overpowering any fear of the supernatural. If that's my son out there, you'd better put that gun away right now. Her voice is steel, leaving no room for argument. Ethan makes a split-second decision. Mom, he calls, stepping out from the trees with Scout at his side. Don't listen to him. It's not what he says, Collins whirls, the gun now pointed directly at Ethan, or more precisely, at the compass clutched in his hand. Put the device down, son. You don't know what you're doing. Sarah rushes down the porch steps, moving to place herself between Collins and her son, but the Ranger sidesteps her, keeping his weapon trained on the compass. That thing is dangerous. Wilson built it to open a doorway to something he didn't understand. I was there when it went wrong, when those children disappeared. What's trying to come back isn't them. Not anymore. Scout lunges forward, placing himself protectively in front of Ethan, his threatening growl a clear warning to Collins. The standoff is interrupted by Sarah's angry voice, cutting through the tension like a knife. Put the gun down now, or I'm calling the sheriff. She holds up her phone, though Ethan knows there's barely enough signal to make a call. This has gone far enough. Collins hesitates, caught between his desperate mission and the very real legal consequences of threatening a child at gunpoint. In that moment of indecision, Ethan whispers a command to Scout, who immediately responds by charging forward, not to attack, but to create a diversion. As Collins flinches back from the dog's feint, Ethan and Sarah seize their chance, dashing toward the forest edge, where the dense underbrush will provide cover from any pursuit. After them, Collins shouts, and Ethan realizes with a shock that the Ranger isn't alone. From around the side of the cabin emerge 2 more men, dressed in civilian clothes but moving with military precision. The chase has begun, with the compass device, children, and the fate of 5 lost children hanging in the balance. Scout leads Ethan and Sarah deeper into the forest, his instincts guiding them along nearly invisible game trails that offer the quickest escape from Collins and his men. Behind them, they can hear shouts and the crack of branches as their pursuers give chase, but the German shepherd's intimate knowledge of the terrain gives them a crucial advantage. "What is happening?" Sarah gasps as they duck under a fallen tree trunk. "Why is a forest ranger pointing a gun at my son?" Ethan, clutching the compass tightly as they run, tries to explain between breaths. "Those children from the photographs, they're real, Mom. They've been trapped between dimensions since 1963. We need to help them get home." Sarah looks like she wants to argue, to dismiss this as impossible, but the events of the past 24 hours have shattered her understanding of reality. "And Collins? He was part of the original experiment," Ethan explains, as Scout leads them up a steep ravine. "He thinks something dangerous is trying to come through with the children, but Daniel says that's not true. Collins is just afraid of what he doesn't understand." They pause at the top of the ridge, catching their breath as Scout scouts the path ahead. The forest stretches before them, bathed in the golden light of late afternoon, peaceful despite the danger at their backs. "I don't know who to believe," Sarah admits, pushing her hair from her face, "but I do know that a man pointing a gun at my child has lost all credibility." Her expression hardens with maternal determination. "What do we need to do?" Before Ethan can answer, Daniel appears beside them, his form stronger now that they're near the 4th anchor point. Sarah gasps but doesn't flee, her eyes wide as she takes in the spectral boy's translucent appearance. "We don't have much time," Daniel says urgently. "Collins knows where all the anchor points are. He'll try to deactivate the ones you've already connected." He points toward a rocky outcropping visible through the trees. "The 4th point is there, and the 5th is back at the lightning-struck pine near your cabin. We have until midnight, when the stars align as they did in 1963, to complete the ritual." Scout whines softly, pressing against Ethan's leg before moving to Daniel's side, his loyalty divided between present and past. The compass in Ethan's hand pulses with blue light, growing warmer as they near the 4th anchor point. "Mom," Ethan says, turning to Sarah with pleading eyes. "I have to help them. They've been trapped for 60 years. Sarah looks from her son to the spectral boy to Scout, her scientific mind battling with the undeniable evidence before her eyes. "And if Collins is right, if there is something dangerous trying to come through?" "He's not," Daniel begins, but Scout suddenly grows alert, his ears perking up as he stares into the forest beyond the outcropping. A moment later, Collins emerges from between the trees, alone but armed, his face grim with determination. "Step away from the boy, Mrs. Parker," he calls, keeping his distance but raising his weapon. "That's not a child. Not anymore." Daniel shrinks back, his form flickering with fear. "He's lying. He just wants to keep us trapped forever." Collins takes a step closer, his voice dropping to a more reasonable tone. "I was there, Mrs. Parker. I saw what came through the first time, what nearly escaped before Wilson managed to partially close the gateway. These children are just projections, masks worn by something far older and more dangerous." Scout growls, positioning himself between Collins and the others, but his posture is uncertain, as if he senses truth in the ranger's words. "If that's true," Sarah challenges, "why not just tell us from the beginning? Why the secrecy, the threats, the guns? Would you have believed me?" Collins counters, "Most people who bought that cabin over the years left within days, driven away by what they saw or heard. When your son stayed, started communicating with them, finding Wilson's equipment, I knew the cycle was starting again." He lowers his gun slightly, a gesture of partial trust. "I'm not your enemy. I'm trying to prevent a catastrophe." Ethan feels torn, the certainty he felt earlier now wavering. He looks at Daniel, whose expression has grown increasingly desperate, then at Scout, whose divided loyalty seems to mirror Ethan's own uncertainty. The children in the photograph, he says slowly. They were real. They did disappear in 1963. That much is true, isn't it? Collins nods. Yes. 5 orphans from the county home. Bright kids. Wilson recruited as assistants. The Gateway experiment was real too. Wilson believed he could open doorways between dimensions, even manipulate time itself. His expression darkens. What he actually contacted was something ancient, something that had been seeking entry to our world for millennia. It used the children, claimed them, and has been trying to complete the Gateway ever since. Daniel's form flares with blue light, his voice taking on a strange, reverberating quality. He's trying to confuse you, Ethan. We're running out of time. The Gateway has to be completed tonight, or we'll be trapped forever. The compass in Ethan's hand grows almost painfully hot, the needle spinning wildly as if responding to conflicting magnetic fields. Scout whines, pressing close to Ethan's side, and in the dog's troubled eyes Ethan sees his own dilemma reflected, the desperate need to believe in the children's innocence warring with the terrible possibility that Collins might be telling the truth. With the sun beginning to set behind the mountains, casting long shadows through the trees, Ethan faces an impossible choice. Trust the spectral children and complete the Gateway, potentially unleashing something dangerous into the world, or believe Collins and destroy the compass, condemning 5 lost souls to an eternity in the void between dimensions. The weight of this decision, too heavy for any 11-year-old to bear, settles on his shoulders as the forest grows dark around them, and the stars begin to appear overhead, aligning slowly into the pattern that will determine the fate of everyone involved. Ethan makes his decision, not through logic or fear, but through trust in the one being who has never betrayed him. Scout, looking into the German shepherd's intelligent eyes, Ethan sees not confusion but clarity, a canine wisdom that transcends the human conflict surrounding them. Scout's gaze shifts deliberately from Ethan to Daniel to the compass. Then, back again. The message unmistakable, despite the lack of words. "I believe them," Ethan announces, stepping back from Collins and toward Daniel's flickering form. "These children have been trapped for 60 years. They deserve a chance to go home." Sarah moves to stand beside her son, her maternal instincts overriding her scientific skepticism. "If my son believes in you," she tells Daniel, "then so do I." Collins shakes his head in frustration. "You're making a terrible mistake. That thing isn't Daniel anymore. It's just wearing his face." But his words lack conviction now, undermined by the gun still in his hand and the desperation in his voice. Scout barks sharply, then turns and trots toward the rocky outcropping where the 4th anchor point awaits, looking back expectantly. Ethan and Sarah follow, with Daniel floating alongside, his form growing stronger as they near the anchor point. Collins makes no move to stop them physically, though his voice follows them through the trees. "You don't understand what you're unleashing." The 4th anchor point is marked by a circle of standing stones, each no taller than Ethan's waist, but positioned with precise astronomical alignment. In the center stands a pedestal similar to the ones at the previous anchor points, bearing the same strange symbol carved into its surface. As the last rays of sunlight fade from the sky, Ethan places the compass on the pedestal, adjusting the dials according to Daniel's whispered instructions. There's a moment of resistance, then a satisfying click as the needle aligns with the carved symbol. Blue light flares from the compass, spreading to encompass the circle of stones in a shimmering dome of energy. Through the translucent barrier, Ethan glimpses another world superimposed over their own. The same forest but different, younger, more vivid, with 5 solid children standing where Daniel's spectral form now hovers. "It's working," Daniel breathes, his voice filled with wonder. "One more anchor point, and we can go home." The vision fades as Ethan retrieves the compass, but the stones continue to pulse with faint blue light, marking another successful activation. "We need to hurry," Emily says, appearing beside Daniel as they leave the stone circle. "The final anchor point is back at the lightning-struck pine near your cabin. We have to reach it by midnight." James, Grace, and Thomas materialize as well, their forms stronger now that 4 of the 5 anchor points are connected. "Collins and his men will try to stop us," Thomas warns, his expression grim. They've been guarding this secret for decades. Scout leads them on a circuitous route through the darkening forest, avoiding the paths where Collins and his men might be searching. The German shepherd moves with absolute confidence, occasionally stopping to allow the slower humans to catch up. His senses attuned to dangers both physical and otherworldly. As they near the cabin, they can see flashlight beams cutting through the trees, Collins's reinforcements searching methodically through the forest. "We'll need a diversion," Sarah whispers as they crouch behind a fallen log, watching the searchers pass by. "I'll draw them away while you and Scout make for the final anchor point." Ethan begins to protest, but his mother's determined expression silences him. "I may not understand everything that's happening," she says softly, "but I trust you, Ethan, and I believe these children deserve a chance." Before he can argue further, Sarah picks up a heavy branch and moves away, circling toward the opposite side of the clearing. A moment later, they hear the crack of breaking wood, and her voice calling out, "Over here! I found something!" The flashlight beams immediately converge on the sound, moving away from Ethan's position. "Now's our chance," Daniel urges. The lightning-struck pine is just beyond the cabin. With Scout leading the way, they make a dash across the open ground, keeping low and using the cabin itself as cover from any watching eyes. The pine tree stands sentinel at the edge of the property, its split trunk a stark silhouette against the star-filled sky. Ethan can see the hole where Scout unearthed the metal box days earlier, now seeming like a lifetime ago. "This is it," Emily whispers, her spectral form vibrating with anticipation. "The final anchor point." Ethan removes the compass from his pocket. Its blue light, now pulsing in perfect rhythm with the stars overhead that have nearly aligned into the configuration shown in Wilson's diagrams. As he approaches the tree, preparing to complete the sequence that will open the gateway and free the trapped children, a voice speaks from the darkness behind them. "I can't let you do this, Ethan." Collins steps into view, his gun raised but his expression more sorrowful than threatening. "I was there when they were taken. I heard what came through their voices after the gateway first opened. These aren't children anymore. They're vessels for something older than humanity itself." Scout growls, placing himself between Collins and Ethan, but the ranger's next words cause the German shepherd to hesitate. "Even the dog knows the truth. Why do you think he's lived so long? Why do you think he led you here? He's been influenced too, part of the long game they've been playing." Ethan looks from Collins to the spectral children to Scout, the compass heavy in his hand as the moment of decision approaches, and the stars continue their inexorable alignment overhead. Scout suddenly begins digging frantically at the base of the lightning-struck pine, in almost the exact spot where he unearthed the metal box days earlier. His paws tear at the soil with urgent purpose, throwing dirt in all directions as everyone watches in confused silence. After a moment, his claws strike something solid, and he backs away, whining expectantly at Ethan. Dropping to his knees, Ethan reaches into the fresh hole and feels something cold and metallic, not another box, but a device. Pulling it free from the earth, he finds himself holding what appears to be another compass, similar to the damaged one but older, its brass casing tarnished and worn. "The prototype," Collins whispers, recognition dawning in his eyes. "Wilson's original design. I thought he destroyed it." Daniel surges forward, his spectral form pulsing with excitement. He hid it as a backup in case something happened to the primary device. Dr. Wilson always had contingencies. The sky overhead has continued its slow rotation, the stars now almost perfectly aligned in the configuration shown in Wilson's diagrams. Time is running out, forcing a decision that can no longer be delayed. "If I complete the ritual," Ethan says, looking from the children to Collins, "what exactly will come through?" Collins opens his mouth to answer, but it's Daniel who speaks first, his voice somber with a truth he can no longer hide. "We are still ourselves, Ethan. Still the children we were in 1963. But in the void, we're not alone. Something else has been using our trapped condition as a means to create a permanent gateway. It wants to cross over, to enter your world through the door we open. Then why should I help you?" Ethan demands, clutching the prototype compass tightly. Why risk releasing something dangerous? Emily steps forward, her translucent form more solid than before as the alignment approaches. Because we've found a way to control the gateway, to filter what comes through. Dr. Wilson discovered it before he died, a specific sequence that would allow us to return while keeping the entity contained. She's lying, Collins insists, but his voice lacks conviction now. The entity is too powerful, too ancient. It's been manipulating events for decades, waiting for this moment. Scout whines softly, looking between Ethan and Daniel, with an expression that somehow conveys both warning and hope. The dog's divided loyalty mirrors the impossible choice facing Ethan. Trust the children who might be influenced by something malevolent, or condemn them to an eternity of half-existence in the void. The stars reach their perfect alignment, bathing the forest in an eerie blue light that seems to emanate from the sky itself. With trembling hands, Ethan places the prototype compass on the ground at the base of the lightning-struck pine, exactly where Scout indicated. Following Daniel's urgent instructions, he adjusts the dials to match the configuration described in Wilson's final notes. Now, Ethan, Daniel pleads as the blue light intensifies around them. It has to be now, or we'll be trapped forever. With a silent prayer that he's making the right choice, Ethan turns the final dial. A blinding flash of blue light erupts from the compass, expanding outward to form a perfect circle around the lightning-struck pine. Within this circle, reality itself seems to waver, like heat rising from hot pavement, and a doorway of pure light appears. A gateway between worlds, between moments in time, the culmination of Wilson's life work and the children's 60-year wait. The spectral children move toward it, their forms becoming more solid with each step, the years of half-existence in the void falling away to reveal the bright, innocent children they once were. But as they approach the doorway, Scout blocks their path, growling not at them but at something unseen within the light, something trying to push its way through behind them. Collins, now understanding the true danger, joins forces with Ethan and Sarah, who has returned just in time to witness the gateway's opening. We can still close it, the ranger says urgently, but we need to act fast. The entity is already beginning to manifest. As midnight approaches, stars align overhead in an impossible configuration never taught in astronomy books. Using the prototype device, Ethan completes the ritual at the final anchor point, feeling the earth tremble beneath his feet as energies beyond human comprehension converge on the lightning-struck pine. A doorway of light appears in the center of the children's circle, its edges pulsing with the same blue radiance that has guided them from the beginning. The spectral children step toward it, their translucent forms becoming increasingly solid as they near the threshold between worlds. Daniel turns back, his face alight with hope and gratitude. "Thank you, Ethan. We can finally go home." But Scout blocks their path, hackles raised, a deep threatening growl rumbling from his chest. His attention is fixed not on the children but on something within the light itself, something invisible to human eyes but clearly perceived by the dog's heightened senses. Collins moves to stand beside Scout, his earlier antagonism forgotten in the face of a greater threat. "It's coming through," he warns, his voice tight with fear. "The entity that's been waiting all these years." The air grows heavy, charged with static electricity that makes everyone's hair stand on end. The light within the gateway shifts, darkens at its center, as if something is pushing against the barrier between dimensions. "What is it?" Sarah asks, instinctively moving closer to Ethan. "What's trying to come through?" Daniel's expression grows troubled, the innocent mask slipping to reveal something older, wiser, and infinitely more burdened. "We don't know what it calls itself," he admits. "In the void, it has no form, no name we could understand. It's ancient, powerful, a consciousness that existed before humans walked the earth." Emily joins him, her voice carrying the same weight of terrible knowledge. "It found us when we were trapped, offered to help us return home. We didn't understand the price until it was too late. It wants a permanent gateway," Collins explains, his years of research suddenly aligning with the children's confession. "A stable door between dimensions that would allow it full access to our world." As if responding to its name, the entity begins to emerge from the light, a shifting, shadowy presence that defies description. Simultaneously liquid and gas, solid and void. It speaks with many voices at once, a chorus that includes echoes of the children's own tones twisted into something ancient and alien. So long, it reverberates. The words felt more than heard, vibrating in the bones and teeth of everyone present. So long we have waited. Scout barks defiantly at the emerging shadow, his body tense and ready to attack despite being hopelessly outmatched. The entity seems to notice the German Shepherd, its amorphous form pausing as if in recognition. The Guardian, it intones. Always the Guardian. Through time, through dimensions, always watching, always interfering. Collins reaches slowly for his gun, though what good conventional weapons might do against such a being remains questionable. Wilson theorized it feeds on consciousness. He whispers to Ethan and Sarah. It wants access to our world because of the billions of minds it could touch, influence, consume. Daniel turns to Ethan, genuine regret in his eyes. We didn't want to lie to you, but we were afraid you wouldn't help us if you knew the truth. We are still ourselves, still the children we were, but we're also changed by our time in the void. The entity has touched our minds, shown us things no human was meant to see. We've been fighting its influence for 60 years, Grace adds, her small face solemn beyond her apparent age. But we're tired, Ethan. So tired. The entity continues to push through the gateway, its shadowy form expanding, reaching tendrils of darkness toward the assembled humans. You have served your purpose, it tells the children, no longer bothering with pretense. The gateway is open. This world is ours. Scout lunges forward suddenly, placing himself directly between the entity and Ethan, his bark changing to a growl so deep it seems to come from the earth itself. The shadow recoils slightly, its advance momentarily checked by the dog's challenge. It fears him, Collins realizes with sudden clarity. The dog exists in both time frames, both dimensions. It's immune to the entity's influence. This revelation sparks a desperate idea in Ethan's mind. The prototype compass, he says urgently. Wilson designed it as a failsafe. It doesn't just open the gateway, it can control what comes through. He drops to his knees beside the glowing device, examining its dials and settings with new understanding. Daniel, help me. There must be a way to reconfigure it, to filter the entity out, while still letting you through. The boy hesitates, caught between his desire for freedom and the terrible knowledge of what might follow him home. The entity, sensing their plan, surges forward with renewed force, its shadow expanding to darken the entire clearing. You cannot stop what has already begun. It booms, the very air vibrating with its power. We have waited millennia for this moment. In the chaos that follows, Collins uses his knowledge of the original experiment to help Ethan reconfigure the prototype device. Sarah shields the children as reality itself seems to warp around them, the boundary between dimensions growing thin enough to tear. And Scout, drawing on some deep connection to both time periods, some essence that transcends physical limitations, stands his ground against an entity older than humanity itself. His loyalty and courage, the final barrier between two worlds poised on the edge of catastrophe. The entity attacks, targeting Ethan as the key holder. Dark tendrils of shadow whip through the air, seeking the boy who dares to manipulate the gateway it has waited millennia to access. Before they can touch him, Scout leaps forward, intercepting the attack with his own body. The German Shepherd yelps in pain as the cold darkness engulfs him, but he doesn't retreat, instead, pushing deeper into the entity's formless mass. Scout, Ethan cries, reaching for his dog, but Collins holds him back. Don't touch it, the ranger warns. The entity exists partially outside our dimension. Direct contact could pull you into the void. Daniel crouches beside Ethan, his spectral form now solid enough to touch the compass device. We need to reverse the polarity, he explains urgently. Dr. Wilson designed a fail-safe, a way to close the gateway from this side while expelling whatever's trying to come through. His small fingers move across the dials with practiced ease, adjusting settings in a sequence Ethan recognizes from Wilson's journals. Sarah positions herself protectively over them, her face pale but determined as she watches Scout struggling within the entity's grasp. The dog's fur glows with an inner light, as if some essence within him is responding to the darkness, fighting back with its own power. "What's happening to him?" she asks, her voice trembling. "He exists in both times, both dimensions," Collins explains, a newfound respect in his voice. "The entity can't simply consume him like it would one of us. They're equally matched in a way we can't comprehend." The children gather around Ethan and Daniel, forming a circle of protection as they work on the compass. Their years in the void have given them insight into the entity's nature, knowledge they now use to help recalibrate the gateway. "It's a being of pure consciousness," Emily explains, her scientist's mind still evident despite her young appearance. "It has no physical form in our dimension, which is why it needs the gateway, needs vessels like us to interact with your world." "But Scout is different," Grace adds, her eyes fixed on the brave dog still fighting within the shadow. "He's anchored in both realities, both time periods. He's neither fully here nor fully there, just like the entity itself." Ethan's hands shake as he turns the final dial, following Daniel's instructions. The compass hums with power, its blue light intensifying until it's almost painful to look at directly. "This will reverse the flow," Daniel says, his voice tight with emotion. "It will pull the entity back into the void and seal the gateway behind it." "But what about you?" Ethan asks, suddenly realizing the implication. "If the gateway closes, you'll still be trapped." Daniel smiles sadly. "We've been trapped for 60 years, Ethan. We've made our peace with it. Stopping the entity is more important than our freedom." Before Ethan can protest, Scout lets out a howl unlike anything they've heard before, a sound that seems to carry across dimensions, across time itself. The dog charges directly into the heart of the entity, drawing on some deep wellspring of energy that makes his entire body glow with blue fire. "He's forcing it back," Collins shouts over the rising wind that whips through the clearing. "The dog is pushing the entity toward the gateway." There's a blinding flash as Scout and Shadow meet at the threshold between worlds, a moment of perfect balance between opposing forces. Ethan activates the compass's failsafe, and the gateway begins to contract, pulling both entity and dog into its shrinking center. "No," Ethan screams, lunging forward only to be restrained by Sarah and Collins. "Scout, come back!" But the German Shepherd looks back one last time, his intelligent eyes meeting Ethan's with an expression of perfect understanding and acceptance. In that moment, Ethan sees not just his beloved pet, but the loyal guardian who has watched over these woods for decades, who has waited patiently for the right person to come and finish what was started in 1963. Scout has chosen his path, knowing exactly what it will cost. The gateway collapses with a thunderous implosion that knocks everyone to the ground. When the light fades and they can see again, the doorway is gone. The entity is gone, and Scout is gone with it. Daniel approaches Ethan, his form now solid and real, no longer a spectral apparition but a living, breathing boy. "He sacrificed himself to seal the breach," he says softly, tears streaming down his face. "He forced the entity back beyond the gateway, used himself as the final key to lock it away." Emily helps Ethan to his feet, her touch warm and human. Scout knew what he was doing. "Ethan, he's been preparing for this moment since 1963, since the first failed experiment. In a way, this is what he was always meant to do." Collins stares at the children in amazement, his years of suspicion giving way to wonder. "You're really back?" "Completely back." He shakes his head in disbelief. Wilson would never have believed it was possible. Sarah embraces Ethan as he breaks down, the loss of his loyal companion an unbearable wound in the wake of their victory. "He saved us all," she whispers against his hair. "He was so much more than just a dog." Around the lightning-struck pine, the forest seems to exhale, as if relieved of a terrible burden it has carried for decades. The first light of dawn begins to seep through the trees, bathing the clearing in a gentle golden glow that chases away the last traces of the night's supernatural darkness. The children, fully return to the world they left 60 years ago, gather around Ethan in silent support, united by their shared understanding of Scout's sacrifice. And somewhere, beyond the boundaries of conventional reality, in a place between dimensions where time flows differently and what seems lost might find new forms, a German shepherd's spirit runs free, having finally completed his long and faithful watch. Morning finds Ethan, Sarah, and the now freed children gathered at the cabin. The junk that once filled the house has transformed, each seemingly random object revealed as a carefully disguised component of the previous owner's temporal research. What appeared to be worthless debris now stands exposed as the life's work of a brilliant scientist who spent decades trying to correct his greatest mistake. Collins, wounded but alive, sits at the small folding table, his years of suspicion and fear replaced by a cautious wonder as he watches the children move about the cabin. These 5 young people, unchanged despite the 60 years that have passed, are living proof of everything he and Wilson had theorized about dimensional travel and temporal displacement. What happens now? Sarah asks, placing a cup of coffee before the exhausted ranger. 5 children who disappeared in 1963 suddenly reappear, not having aged a day. How do we explain that to the authorities? Collins sighs, running a hand through his gray hair. We don't. Not the truth, anyway. He looks at the children with newfound respect. Their families are long gone. Records from that era were spotty at best, especially for orphans from the county home. As far as the world is concerned, they never existed at all. Daniel approaches, having overheard the conversation. Dr. Wilson prepared for this possibility, he explains. Before the experiment, he created documentation, birth certificates, school records, with dates that would place us in this time period. He knew that if we ever returned, we would need new identities. Emily joins them, nodding in agreement. The documents are in the hidden laboratory, in a waterproof case behind the main workbench. Doctor, Wilson thought of everything. So, what will you do? Ethan asks, his grief over Scout temporarily set aside as he confronts this new reality. Where will you go? The question hangs in the air. 5 displaced children with nowhere to belong in a world that has moved on without them. Sarah exchanges a glance with Collins, then turns to the children with a tentative smile. You could stay here, with us. This cabin is Ethan's now, and it's certainly big enough for everyone once we clear out some of Wilson's equipment. She looks at her son, gauging his reaction. We could be your guardians, help you adjust to this time. The offer is unexpected but instantly appealing to all involved. The children, who have known only each other's company for 60 years in the void, light up at the prospect of a real home, a family. Collins nods approvingly. The mountain exists at a unique intersection of cosmic forces, he explains, his scientific curiosity overcoming years of fear. It's why Wilson chose this location for his experiments in the first place. The energy signature from the gateway will linger for decades, perhaps centuries. Someone should remain here to monitor it, to ensure nothing else tries to exploit that weakness between dimensions. His expression turned solemn. The entity was pushed back, but beings like that don't simply cease to exist. It will be looking for another way through, another gateway. So we become the new guardians, Ethan says, understanding dawning in his eyes. We maintain the cabin as a watchtower, protecting the sealed gateway. The idea gives purpose to his grief, a way to honor Scout's sacrifice by continuing his vigilant watch over the mountain's secrets. As they begin clearing the property together, transforming the cluttered junkyard into a true home, Ethan hears something that makes his heart stop, a familiar bark from the tree line. Turning slowly, hardly daring to hope, he sees a German shepherd puppy standing at the edge of the forest. Its coat the same distinctive pattern of silver gray and white, its intelligent amber eyes fixed on Ethan with unmistakable recognition. Daniel is the first to understand, his face breaking into a joyful smile as he kneels beside Ethan. Time works differently beyond the gateway, he explains softly. What appears lost sometimes finds its way back in unexpected forms. Scout's essence, his spirit, it exists outside conventional time. This puppy isn't Scout. Not exactly. but it carries something of him, something that found its way back to you. The puppy bounds toward Ethan, its tail wagging with enthusiastic joy, and as he kneels to embrace his returned friend, tears of gratitude streaming down his face, Ethan knows their story on the mountain is just beginning. The cabin will stand as a beacon on the boundary between worlds, its new family of guardians watching over the sealed gateway, protecting a secret most of humanity will never know exists. And Scout, or whatever new name this incarnation might earn, will continue his ancient vigil alongside them, a loyal sentinel spanning dimensions, bridging past and present, and reminding them all that some bonds transcend even the strongest barriers between worlds.